Hello. What a beautiful day it is today. I mean, the sun is very bright, but I don't have any sunglasses currently, so it really is beautiful though, you know? The blue sky, the green grass, just the vibrancy of summer. Like, don't get me wrong, living in the UK, we don't deal with the heat very well at all. And in the colder months, we're always longing for the warmer months, but then in the warmer months, we're always complaining that it's too hot and stuffy. I don't really know what the point of this video is. I haven't got any idea of where I want to go with this. No structure, no defined purpose. But I just wanted to talk to you. So please sit down, chill out, get a nice cold drink. I don't know. I recently just had surgery. A couple of days ago. It's currently the 11th, and I had surgery on the 7th. I had a hip arthroscopy, reshaping of the femoral head, reshaping of the labrum, and cartilage repair. This injury was caused by overtraining. Cam impingement on my hip on both sides, but the right side is more symptomatic, so we decided to tackle that first. And it was caused by just training an awful lot when I was, 15. I was so committed to being a professional mixed martial artist, like that was my dream. I was doing everything in my power to make that a reality, mentally and physically. But I'm quite an obsessive person. It's part of my personality, and that can lead me to being unbalanced in other areas of my life, And I was quite unbalanced in my training. I was training like a professional athlete. But maybe at a stage where, my body was still developing and I maybe shouldn't have been pushing it as hard as I was. But I just want to express, even though they won't hear it, probably. It's not like my surgeons, nurses and doctors that treated me are going to be watching this video, but nonetheless I still want to express my deepest gratitude to those who have been there for me, who have taken care of me, and who have got me this surgery that I needed. It really means a lot, really. And just words can't describe how grateful I am, truly, for the free healthcare that we have in this country. Although it has its faults, there are amazing things about it as well. And I've waited for this surgery for, 3 years. And it was painful, because for a while, for about 1.5 to 2 years, we didn't know what the problem was. And so we were trying to tackle it in multiple ways, without definitively knowing what the proper solution would be. And so we were operating on a mode of trial and error, and nothing was really working. They were telling me that really I had to lower my activity, I had to stop training. But I just couldn't accept that. And I'm not willing to accept that, because I love it so much. It's such a valuable part of my life. And the impossible is only impossible until it is made possible. There has to be somebody that is an outlier. And I'm 100% committed, and I have been, to getting back, no matter what it takes. No matter the sacrifices I have to make, or the time and effort that I have to put in. That's how bad I want it. And when you want something really badly, nothing can really stand in your way. And so I kept pushing for a solution. I kept telling them nothing's getting better. First I rested, then I did alternative methods of recovery, such as cryotherapy, which is cold water, cold water plunges, immersion, heat therapy, stretching, massaging, physiotherapy. I did it. But nothing was giving me enough to feel like it was 100%. And I know nothing will ever feel truly 100%, but close enough for me to feel confident. And for my body to be able to meet the demands of the activity I wanted to pursue. So I kept pushing, and we're here now, 3 years later. After much waiting, much anticipation, we're here. And I'm just grateful. It's still very early on. Is my crutch falling over? Yeah, it's still very early on, and I'm going to be on crutches for a while, but it's all part of the process. It's temporary and short-term discomfort for long-term gain. Often the things that are the hardest in the moment are the best for us in the long term. And often the things that are the easiest in the moment are the worst for us in the long term. I once read a quote, I don't know who by, but it's very pertinent to this. And the quote was, "The road to heaven often feels like hell, and the road to hell often feels like heaven." So our feelings deceive us. Sacrifice in the moment feels bad, but sacrifice is also the discovery that we can work to make a better future. So what have I learnt from having this surgery? Well, I've learnt that suffering and pain is transmutable. although it can be severe and crippling, and it can be much, much worse than what I'm going through right now. You know, my father is going through worse currently than what I'm going through right now. But being able to appreciate what you do have, you know, the fact that this is aimed at some betterment, it makes the struggle worthwhile and endurable. You know, Nietzsche famously said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." And it reminds me of when I quit smoking before my surgery, a week before. Now, I probably could have quit earlier, but I quite enjoy smoking. Nicotine is quite addictive and cognitively stimulating, especially for somebody who thinks a lot and does a lot and seeks relief in downtime, because they very rarely get it. It keeps you stimulated, but it also keeps you calm. But my purpose for quitting was based solely on entering surgery as best as I possibly could. And so it was a necessary sacrifice that I had to make, at least in my mind. It was absolutely justified. And the short-term gain of continuing smoking, something that I did enjoy and do enjoy, it wasn't worth it in comparison to the damage that it could do. You know, and it was no guarantee that it was going to make my recovery any better. But there was strong suspicion that it would. And so I acted out of faith that it would make it better, faith that it would put me in a better position, and I believe it did. And obviously I still haven't returned to smoking, but it did make the whole process a little bit more difficult. You know, for example, with sleep disruption, mood imbalances, irritability, stress. It is very hard to quit smoking, but when you have a meaning that is strong enough, you can quit anything when you have a meaning that is strong enough. I truly believe that. You know, meaning is the essence of everything we do in life. Wow. There's an aeroplane flying really closely above me. A pink aeroplane. Pink and white. I've never seen a pink aeroplane before. But damn, even from down here, that is loud. I don't know if you guys would have heard that. Probably did, but what a magnificent piece of technology. If you would have showed our ancestors that, they would have thought it was alien. It just shows how quick we get used to things that have come so far. I've also learnt during this process that sometimes you need to break down to build up again, to rise again, and to be able to come back stronger. You know, your foundation has to be shaken, and your core changed, and the only way that can happen is if part of you dies. So then it can be reborn, right? Jesus Christ had to die before he was resurrected. You know, the phoenix has to burn to ashes before it can rise again. And so it's a very common mythological motif that continually arises throughout various cultures and traditions, that to be born again, to change, to grow, you must die in some form. You must be broken down to be built back up again. And so in the moment, like currently for me right now, I kind of feel like shit. I kind of look like shit, probably. Things around me don't feel great. I can't be as productive as I want to be. I can't train, which is a massively important part of my life. I can't do really what I want to do. I can't work. I can't even walk without the crutches that are by my side. But that's okay, because this is only temporary. And this will actually introduce me to my strength later on. And what I mean by that is, one thing cannot exist without another. I've been reading a book recently, which is very pertinent to my situation, because I like to read books that I can relate to in the moment and that I can practically apply right then and there in some way, shape or form, whether that be passing on the knowledge to somebody or digesting the knowledge in a way that is going to be immediately beneficial to me, or actually applying it like I am now. But the book is called No Mud, No Lotus, and if you're interested in transforming suffering, then I'd really recommend that book. It talks about breathing, it talks about accepting suffering and working through it, and how suffering can be passed down, through generations, through our ancestors, because if they don't deal with their suffering, then they pass it on. There's two ways you can deal with suffering. You can either change it and transmute it, or you can pass it on. You can let it live within you, and inevitably that will lead to it being passed on. Because energy doesn't just stay in one place. It radiates, and it radiates outward. It starts from within, but then it moves outside, especially if it's sustained long enough. And so we have the choice to let our suffering be passed on, or to transmute it and make sure that it ends with us. We can infect our loved ones with our own suffering by our spite, by our resentment, and by the way we treat them. We can make them suffer as a result of our suffering. And a lot of times that is the approach to suffering. Someone will become resentful and then vengeful, because they will want to inflict the pain that they feel has been unjustly distributed to them upon some other unworthy soul. But that is no way for peace or restoration. That is only going to lead to more and more destruction and devastation. And I don't think no one in their right mind wants to make the people that they love or people around them suffer, unless they somehow justify it in their own minds, like they believe through their ideology and the thoughts they hold that the person deserves it. Or they believe that the fact that they didn't deserve the suffering that they are facing justifies them inflicting it on others. Because, hey, it happened to me, so why can't I do it to someone else? Why shouldn't I do it to someone else? Because that doesn't solve the problem. The only way to solve the problem is to solve it within yourself. A lot of people, they feel like getting rid of the energy will help relieve them of the suffering that they're feeling. And so if they can inflict it upon someone else, then they're going to feel better about themselves. But oftentimes that leads to even more misery. And you and I and everybody walking the earth knows that. We don't need to be taught that. We don't need to be told that. It's a universal truth that we all know, because we all are sinners. But once you have the knowledge that with something as simple as your breath, you can transmute suffering. Like, for example, right now, I'm not in that much pain. It's getting a lot better. And I finally started taking a bit of medication because I'm so focused on being self-dependent, self-reliant, self-sufficient and disciplined, and only doing what is necessary. Because I wasn't in that much pain, like in comparison to what I could be, I kept putting the meds off. I was like, nah, I don't need them. But then after a few nights of disrupted sleep and bad recovery and no real progress and frustration, I decided, okay, maybe I should just take them and see what happens. I'll just take some. And it helped me sleep a little bit. And I think it's helping the pain a little bit as well. And so I guess I've been given them for a reason. Surprise, right? But sometimes we need to drop the pride and the ego before we can accept that we need help. Before we can accept that there might be things that we don't know. That's why pride is the fundamental sin in the Bible. At least from my observations, theologically and philosophically, on specifically the Bible, pride is the sin from which all of the sins emerge, because the pride that we believe we can disobey the divine and we can go against the divine and we can make our own way is what allows us to engage in all the other sins, right? It's a lack of respect for the divine. It's a lack of admiration for the divine. And that comes from pride. It comes from ignorance. It comes from the ego. You have to drop your ego to think about what good you do have in your life, even when things are bad. So sit there in your suffering and do not hide away from it. Do not try to distract yourself from it. Don't get me wrong, escapism can be powerful. Like, delving into an interesting book or a novel that takes your mind away from the current situation, without neglecting your responsibility to the situation, because that is a key point. It can be useful, but like anything, it's about balance. It's about achieving, as Aristotle said, the golden mean. Too much of anything is too bad, and too little of anything is too bad. So we want to strike a balance in all we do in life. And that is pretty much the essence of good living. Although one thing probably goes against that, and that's virtue. I mean, do we want to strike a balance when it comes to being virtuous? I don't know. Maybe we have to strike a balance when it comes to virtuous, because none of us are Jesus. None of us are God incarnate, and so we will all fall short at times in life. And so we have to be graceful with ourselves and in forgiving ourselves for our sins. And maybe that's the balance that is to be achieved. But in striving for virtue and goodness, I don't think we should be balanced. I think we should put it above all else. I think we should make it a priority in our lives. That is, if we want to be virtuous, and if we think virtue will ultimately save the world. And what save the world means, I don't know, but redeem it, justify it, make it meaningful. Those are all forms of saviour, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. I mean, what do I know? I'm just a 19-year-old man, but I still feel like a boy, trying to navigate his way through life. Do you ever feel like you're wandering with no fixed destination, no fixed purpose? Sometimes it's stronger than others, sometimes your direction is stronger and more evident to you than other times, but mostly you're just figuring things out. And I feel like we will always be figuring things out. The fundamental wisdom and knowledge, as Socrates so eloquently said, is that we do not know nothing. That is wisdom, the knowledge of our own ignorance. But the benefit to that is it always keeps us striving if we approach it with the right mindset. I've gone off on a tangent here. Let me bring it back to the book, No Mud, No Lotus. So it's saying that you cannot have one without the other. So if you're suffering, or you feel anger arise within you, or any negative emotion that you might feel, or any pain or discomfort, sit there with it. Feel it fully. And breathe. Just breathe. Focus on this moment that you have right now. Focus on what you do have. A body, a mind, eyes, ears, taste buds, touch, people that you love, consciousness. And this is what the author brings it to. He says, focus on your breath, and on the in-breath, think to yourself, or say, but rather think to yourself, because you can't really speak when you are breathing deeply. As you breathe in, I am aware of my in-breath. And as you breathe out, I am aware of my out-breath. And even if you are in suffering, even if you are in pain, me personally, what I've found is when I do that, I can get some joy from it. I can get some real joy from that. Just do it right now as a little practice. I don't know. See what happens. But do it fully and be there fully present with it. Don't half commit. Don't half-arse it. Fully do it. And you'll find that you can actually extract some joy from something as simple as that. The ability to be aware of your breath. The ability to see colour. Look around right now. There are people out there that can't see. They would do anything, absolutely anything, to have the ability you have right now. People that can't hear, they would do absolutely anything to have that ability. And so if you do have that ability, And even more, if you have both of those abilities, you are blessed in ways that you take for granted. And just focusing on those abilities and what blessings they are can bring you joy in the darkest of times. Where there is darkness, there must inevitably be light. It's like the symbol of the yin-yang. It's like that for a reason. Where there is light, there is dark. Where there is dark, there is light. Everything exists in counterposition to its opposite. And so it could not exist if it was not for the presence of its opposite. And so understand that the cycles of life, they continue. Nothing is temporary. Nothing is permanent. And that even in a bad situation, you can find something good. And in a good situation, conversely, you can find something bad. It just depends if you look for it, and how hard and how dedicated you are to finding it. Knock and you shall find. Seek and you shall discover. There's a quote, and it's I don't know who it's by once again, but I remember the quote and I remember the idea. And it's just entered my mind because it's quite relevant, and that is, he who is wealthy is content with the least, or something along those lines. And I think it's by a Stoic philosopher, because it is a very Stoic sentiment. But that rings true here. What does it take you to be grateful? How much do you put off happiness, the very thing that you desire, from yourself? Because you set unrealistic conditions and standards and requirements for that happiness. And so you continually postpone it as something that you can have in the future. But there is no guarantee that you will ever reach that future, or you will ever attain those things. And when you do, what makes you think that those requirements you have set for yourself are magically going to allow that feeling, that desire that you have to be happy, to arise? It's just a conception you have created for yourself, based on your view of reality, based on what you want, but not based on what actually is required for you to be happy. And therefore he who is wealthiest is content with the least. A lot of life isn't about gaining, it's about letting go of what's unnecessary. Because so much of what we crave, of what we hold on to, of what we attach ourselves to, is unnecessary, and is more of a burden than a gift. And when we let go, and in letting go, we often find real peace, real wisdom, real serenity. I'm going to end the video here because I could talk on forever, honestly. And it hasn't been very coherent. It hasn't followed a clear structure, like I said. I didn't come here for that purpose. I didn't come here to make a specific kind of video or get across a specific point. I just came here to talk. Talk to you like you're a friend. And I hope you've been able to sit here with me and enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed sitting here with you and being present. And I really appreciate it if you're still here. I really do. Because your presence, your attention is the most valuable thing you can ever give anybody else. Obviously your love as well, but your presence comes first. And so I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you being here. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, whatever you're doing. And yeah, I guess we'll talk soon.